he is 100% worth it.
He takes it to another level. Oh my God, I just fell in love with it.
Thanks so much, Jay.
Blew my mind. And it worked. I wanted to buy my thing.
Jay is, I would say, the Yoda of sales calls, man.
Just talking to Jay, he was so good at just taking what it is, seeing the opportunity and the value and the real reason we are making it.
Talk to Jay because he got it. He can definitely help you out.
Talk to Jay. You're going to get a lot. You're going to gain a lot.
I would absolutely recommend him for any position that you have.
Jay's definitely the guy.
Give him the chance, give him the opportunity. You won't regret it.
He's good at what he does, so I highly recommend him, and I would book him before he is fully booked out.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sales Ninja Show podcast, where we cut through the noise and ditch the outdated sales tactics and show you how to close deals with confidence, strategy, and integrity. I'm Jay Lee, founder of Sales Ninja, a former introvert, former banker, former pastor, a lot of formers, and now a sales coach to help you grow and scale your business. So if you're tired of chasing leads, handling endless objections, and feeling like you have to convince people to buy, you're definitely in the right place. Here, we do sales differently. We believe in positioning over pressure, where the right people lean in without the need for pushy or salesy tactics. And that's really the heart of the reverse glass selling framework, which is a kingdom-driven approach built on trust, service, and true connection. Because when you lead with value, sales becomes effortless. And when you sell more, you can give more. And today we've got something special for you. Our guest is a former story producer, also a jazz pianist who now helps B2B tech companies turn complex technical ideas into simple, powerful narratives. He believes in creativity, which is a discipline, simplicity is an art, and that integrity, curiosity, and clarity are non-negotiables in great communication. So please welcome Mike Terlizzi. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Wow, that's the first time that anyone has ever played an instrument on the Sales Ninja Show podcast. So that's a first. So thank you, Mike, for doing that. How are you today?
Doing well.
Awesome. So thanks for joining the Sales Ninja Show podcast. If you guys are a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur and you want to jump and be a special guest on the Sales Ninja Show podcast, just comment podcast and we'll see if we're a good fit. So welcome again, Mike, to the Sales Ninja Show podcast. How does a guy go from jazz piano and film sets to B2B tech marketing?
I'm sorry, I had to use that time to figure out why I was getting feedback. Well, the question was, how
do you go from jazz piano and film sets to B2B tech marketing? That's a pretty big shift.
Yeah, it is. I'm from Boston originally, and I moved to LA and worked in TV. Really enjoyed my work. It was mostly story production. But after that many years, I thought I don't want to live here forever. And going back home was kind of tricky, because when you work in TV, no one knows what you do. And so every single bullet point of my, like even some of the titles are like, oh, talent and development. So HR and fundraising. I was like, no, that's scouting on air talent, like comedians, and developing shows, like producing them. But I couldn't, if I changed it, then they'd say, how come you changed your title? I'd be like, because it didn't mean that in your world. So I went to get an MBA, because I figured that they would know, and maybe it would open up some doors. And while I was there, I did this. I had this idea to help this associate, I guess, get a company off the ground. And someone said that it was a really clever content marketing strategy, and I was like, "A what?" Like I had no idea what he was talking about. And he said, "Well, maybe you should look into it." I said, "Okay." And then from there, that's how the jazz thing was like something I did on the side. I mean, it's professional, I get paid to do it. But my cousin told me, if you want to do it, he was a professional pianist who played at Carnegie Hall. He said, if you want to do it for a living, you have to really love it, and you'll know when. Yeah. And I remember a time playing, and I felt like I was doing data entry because I played like 3 or 4 times that week. I was like, oh man, how can this be boring? But so I was glad I didn't go say I didn't love it. But yeah, that was kind of and then that summer I worked in cybersecurity soon after, and I just found I never had considered the whole process of what I did in television would really have any bearing in at an MBA. I just didn't think it would have any value. It turned out to have a ton of value because that's sort of when people like the narrative or how you present a product or brand something. That's sort of has a lot of similarity to storytelling, and even in B2B tech. I would recommend a book called Jaws in Space. It's if you replace script with product and studio with customers, Jaws in Space is maybe a better book on how to tell the story of your product than any book about how to tell the story on your product.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna look at that.
So yeah, that I guess it wasn't a banana peel, but yeah, I had a very interesting career in LA and met some interesting people, but eventually needed to get back home.
Amazing. So, okay, I just want to stick on the piano side and just for a little second before we jump into the entrepreneurial and the B2B tech.
Sure.
Being a musician as well, I was classically trained. So to learn something like blues was difficult, and jazz is absolutely a different language for me because, when I did classical training, I was on this track and it was like the set, notation where I would read it and then memorize it. And jazz, I feel like is like the opposite, where it's like fluid and you obviously have to learn all the technical skills, but it's like when I look at jazz and I look at the chords and I hear it, it sounds amazing, but doing it is a whole nother art. How the heck did you learn jazz? Did you get taught? Did you just fiddle around?
Well,
what did you do?
Piano is the first thing I was, or the only thing I'm better at my dad at. Like the one thing he's better at me at everything.
Oh, he's just really good at a lot of things.
Yeah. By piano, he played for 2 years, and in 6 months, I don't know, 6th grade, 7th grade, I'd surpassed him. So he just said, maybe not for me.
Wow.
He's still 350 to 0 in our chess games since I was a kid. He's never lost. You'd think he'd let me win, but no. Yeah, no, that's not. You got to earn it.
Wow.
So I said, "Oh, okay, I have a talent for this, I guess." And I enjoyed it. And then I heard the Doors, and that kicked me into like, 3rd gear. And then in high school, I met these musicians who were really talented. One of them is he went to the conservatory in New England. The other 2 went to Oberlin. So these were like serious musicians. They were way better than me. And so I had to get better to keep up with them. And that's really.
Did you go to the conservatory? Did you take lessons, or did you learn on
yes,
yourself?
I didn't go to the conservatory. I didn't want to pursue it for a living, but I went to. I had jazz lessons with a guy named Bob Bauman, and he taught me the basics of jazz. And it takes a little while, but if you learn, you have to all the rules of music. You already know like why a dominant chord or a fifth is a fifth, and why Beethoven always used the fifth to 1, the 5. So if you have that already, then you just have to adapt it to a 1 4 5, and then 1 3 2 4 5 6 1, and you'll start to hear, oh, I've heard this melody, I've heard this progression before, and you kind of learn how to approach the notes chromatically, or you have to kind of break the rules that you learn, and eventually you use lead sheets, which look different than classical music. It's just one clef with a note, and then above it it's a C with a -7, so that would be C minor 7, or C triangle 7. That's C with the major 7.
Yes.
And you just read melody and chord, and there's no specific way you have to play it. You just have to listen to the people that you're playing with. And I had some great people playing with me, and I got to watch them play and comp for them, which is a compliment when they're soloing. And that saxophone player eventually, at a point in college, I walked up and said, his name is Pete. I said, Pete, you need to find a new piano player. I can't keep up with you anymore. Like, I just can't. Yeah, he was doing things that I just couldn't compliment them. So I just sat there kind of playing real basic stuff, like, and I was like, I can't. You got to bring it down a level, or I can't keep up. Yeah, he was really good. Pete Robbins is his name. He has an album it's a song called "Candy to the Crowd" that I really think is great. So I'm going to give him a plug.
Cool. I love that. I think jazz is a goal and a journey at the same time for me to also learn and reach, being a classically trained. And now my context is like as a Christian and a former worship pastor, leading like gospel and kind of Christian worship music. So that is really interesting. So
I will send you I'll send you a book my cousin wrote in Europe, which he went to by boat. He had a fear of planes. But he went by boat, which is scarier. I'll send you he wrote a book called The Mechanics of Modern Music in 1970. And I'll send it to you. It's a little heavy, but it should show you what he's talking about. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So you said that storytelling is a buzzword that lost its meaning. Let's call it out. What do most marketers get hilariously wrong about it?
Well, what I noticed was the word emerged right around the time I was in school. And so people would say, oh, you must be like, they said, you understand storytelling. I said, yeah, I mean, I guess, but I think they were talking about something else, because like I'd worked as like head of a story department, and I had people ask me when I was trying to make that transition, is story important for a television show? And I was thinking, it's the most important thing for any show, is the story. Now that's the entertaining story. And the thing marketing gets wrong a lot is taking the things you need to make a great story and entertain. The story is just there to entertain. They take those things, the Joseph Campbell hero journey and whatnot, they put it onto things that already exist in marketing and just call it storytelling. So, for instance, they'll say, "Oh, try to put yourself, in your customer's shoes and connect with them emotionally," but they never say how. Right. And then they'll say things like, "Every product." You want to create a feeling because it has a message, and every message needs literally, to quote, I don't want to name, but every message needs a story. I say, no, every story needs a message. You see, and like Back to the Future has a message. Die Hard has a message. Back to the Future is about, decisions you make and how they will impact your future. And the story is about a guy who goes back in time and almost makes up with his mom.
Yeah. That was
watching as an adult.
McFly.
Yeah, exactly. And Die Hard is a story about a man who wants to just tell his wife he's sorry, and he thought he was going to get a chance to, and then he wasn't able to, and that's what that movie's about. And I won't say what this is about, but Aliens is not really about aliens. So anyone out there want to DM me and tell me what they think the real story, the underlying messages. So marketers, they say, every message needs a story. Then they say, you want to create. They say, imagine yourself as your customer. Well, you shouldn't imagine yourself as your customer. You should do research about your customer. If you imagine yourself, you're going to project yourself onto your customer, and that doesn't really help. Then that won't be you have to get into their heads. It's like anything, it's not about a movie or a story. It's different. You're going to use different techniques because you're there to tell a story for entertainment. And so here's one. This book I was reading. I love to read some of these, but some people get it really right. Craig Wortman, for instance, he has a book called "What's Your Story?" And it's great because it's about telling stories and how they can help with certain situations. diplomacy. I believe Reagan was a great storyteller. Clinton too. I don't really remember. They're certainly a little too young for Reagan, but there was something called the muscularity of a story, and the definition of a story, and this is informational content plus an emotional link to those you want to reach. Kind of, but how do you get that emotional reach, or how do you get that? How do you understand them? There's a lot of work that goes into that, and it takes long interviews. And then there was another thing it said about the muscularity and something about the strength of a story, and it was just him looking at specs for a fridge, and then he was going to buy this fridge, and then this guy came over and said, "Oh," his friend said, "Oh, that fridge is terrible. You should, buy this other one." And he said that, and because of that story, he did. And I was like, that's not the power of a story. That's the power of referral. That's the power of someone you trust giving you, telling, advice on what to buy. A story, that's just not what that was. It's not a story. It's not, anytime you hear create compelling content, just always follow up with how do I do that? How do I compel people? What is it that I do? Well, you have to learn about them, and it takes a long time for the product. I'll put it this way. There is one thing, if you take the entertaining story and the product story, the story of a product, and then draw a Venn diagram, the one word in the middle that would be there would be stakes. What's at stake? So when you watch a movie, the stakes are what, Marty applies it, that you got to play. If you don't play, they don't dance. If they don't dance, there's no kiss. If there's no kiss, they don't fall in love, and I'm history. There's a lot at stake. And then after he has to go to the DeLorean and get back in time, and there's just that's what draws you into the story, and often gives meaning to the underlying message of the story. So that's where was I going with that? Yes. So stakes in this world, you want to ask, okay, so what's at stake? Like one more example, like a game show. What is a game show? But a real-time story about people with things at stake. What would it be if they didn't have anything at stake? Do you want to spin the wheel of certainty? Does that sound like fun? Like, no, it's every part's the same. Take the wheel. And then in business, it's what's at stake for you, your stakeholders. What's at stake if you do buy my product? What's at stake if you don't? And that's what people, because nobody cares about what your product is. They care about themselves. They want something that's going to either make them look good, or their life easier, or their job easier. That they have a problem. Hopefully they're aware of it, and you provide a solution. Everything else is noise. Like, I don't care about the 800 features of Adobe Premiere that I do not use. I just care about they could tell me very simply what it does. And, that's what they get into feature dumping and talking about the technical parts. And so I take a wider view, which is why it helps in B2B tech. And it's part of the simplification process. You just take a step back from the tech, and whenever it gets to the language that is just foreign to me, that's when I kind of signal like, well, we got to stop there. We don't need to go that deep. We have to focus on the customer and what is it we're doing for them? That they not how technically, just tell them what you're doing, and do it in a way that's different than the competition. So look at the competitive landscape. How are they messaging? What colors are they using? What tone? What are they saying? What are the words they're using? Find the zigs and then zag. And that's your strategy, to be a Jaguar, really. And that sets you apart. Don't be different for the sake of being different, but don't, make sure that you're focusing on like the key main point. And it's hard to do for like even me right now. I'm updating my website because I can tell other people's stories or the story of another person's product. I'm terrible at telling my own story.
Yeah, so true. I mean, we all have our own blind spots, and I think you said it really well. When you have like a product, service, or software that has a lot of horsepower to do a lot of different things, like Adobe Premiere, for example, and you go to someone who is not tech savvy or even interested, they just want to know, can you make this graphic? Can you make this video? Can you make this presentation? Will AI or whatever tool be able to save me 3 days or 3 hours because I have a timeline? and my boss or my client needs it like yesterday. I don't need to hear the 800 features. So you said the zigs and zags. I want you to kind of go a little bit deeper on the zigs and zags, because when you're teaching a storytelling, especially in the B2B tech space, many people get lost in the weeds and get lost in the features. How do you practically teach people how to do the zigs and zags, how to share the story or the product or service in a way that's simple yet solves X problem?
I ask them the 5 big questions. Why did you make this product? What's the problem it solves? And that assumes people are aware that there is a problem. And then the next is, why should anybody buy it? And why is it different than what they have? Why does that difference make it better? And why should anyone care? So the 4th point, why does people say be different, be better? No, be different, be better because you're different. Not, you can't be one or the other. Being different for the sake of being different doesn't really make sense. But if you can differentiate and then highlight that point, and that's usually when the technobabble goes away, because they have to tell me in non-technical terms what they're talking about. Say like, I came up with like the phrase, cyber threat prevention network or something. I don't know exactly how that works, but that's what it was. That's what that product was. So, and for white papers and stuff, I definitely take I take sort of an editor role, because that's more bottom of the funnel. You're getting down into the weeds, and the CFO isn't going to be probably looking at that. But if you can message it simply, so that, because B2B, you have to buy a 18-headed beast that you don't know what it's doing behind closed doors. So if you can make it easy and to understand it will help you get, come out on the right side of the stakes. That's how I get to simplicity. I get them to create a pitch. I tell them, write log lines for movies, pretend it's your product, right? So I write log lines for movies had to do 1 million of these. And the hardest part of the whole thing was the log lines, 1 or 2 sentences, 50 words top, that describes the whole movie. That was easier than the 2-page summary. That was easy. The character descriptions, my own notes, 1, 2, how do you do that in 50 words of the whole movie? And you have to capture not only the story and plot, but like the purpose. And it's very hard. But if you can learn to do that, then you can learn to, that's one of the ways to be simple and get over what's I believe is a complexity bias that plagues business everywhere, and people. The overcrowded deck, the need to be complex. It's a default, and it's a good leader will not let that get in his way. He'll make.
What were the 5 big questions again? So why did you create the product?
Yeah, why'd you create it? Why should someone buy it? Why is it different than what they have? Why does that difference make it better? And why should anyone care?
Okay, so why did you create the product? Why should someone buy it? Why is it different?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the next 2?
Why does that difference make it better?
Okay.
And why should anyone care?
Is it?
And I work on that 5th part. That 5th part, that's where, that's where the TV, the creative, the imagination comes into play. But to be fair, engineers have come up with great ideas once you get them relaxed and able to, because they're very precise people, and they should be, or everything would break.
Right.
You get them relaxed, and they'll start to talk about, they'll throw out ideas that may not be accurate. And that's great, because then eventually you get to a good one. Brainstorming is another thing, another myth that I've seen it written about in books. Again, it's not about thinking outside the box. It's about thinking inside the box, but you create the box, and the box you create is right for ideation. And then when you're ready to go execute, outside of the box, back to work.
Okay. Speaking about box, can you get into the center of the box of your camera?
Oh yeah, definitely.
No worries. I just want to make sure that the clips and the replay comes out in a way that you can use for your socials. So you said You said
Some
a
of these
word
costs are
that
terrible.
you said a word that I wasn't familiar with. You say when you were summarizing and capturing the whole story or the purpose of the movie, you said log lines. What is that?
A log line. It's like a 25 to 50 word summary of a movie. When you read a script, I was in the mailroom at an agency, I had to read, the first script I ever read was Saw. And my notes were, this was very well written, but I wouldn't go see it in the theater. It's very, very, very disturbing. But you have to get it all down to like 50 words. And so I just asked them, take your favorite movie and write a log line. In one sentence, tell me what that movie was about and what, get the whole heart of it in one sentence. And it's very hard. Another way to simplify things is to use, and I did not invent this term, it's called mental real estate. So again, Jaws in Space is named that way because that's how it was pitched. Jaws in Space. Jaws had just come out. We just got into the moon, and Hollywood is the language of money. And so they were like, Jaws, money, space, imagination, limitless, people were interested in it. Great. And then later, Aliens was pitched as Predator meets Rambo.
Oh yeah,
so that's see it, mental real estate. So concepts that everyone knows that's really what I do. So even accounting, I wrote a book for accounting to help myself learn accounting. I just changed Nordstrom's to a farm because Nordstrom balance sheets are complicated, and if you don't know accounting, it won't help. Like, oh, net asset backed secure. I don't know what that is, but it's an asset. Okay. Like, how about a farm? And everyone knows it. Like, hey, here's your barn. That's your property, plant, and equipment. Here's your cow. Do you sell milk? Also your property, plant, and equipment? Or you sell meat? Inventory, right? So you can it's easy to learn these things. But the way people write, it's again, complexity bias. There's a number of reasons for it. It's the one cognitive bias that makes life more difficult. I don't know, but people don't take the time to really think it through and come up with a simple, elegant solution. Or slide deck, for instance. If you give a presentation, it shouldn't be cluttered.
Here's a good segue. So, in a practical way for the audience, what's the simplest or favorite framework because we're saying what it needs to be done, but how do we tell a story, whether you have a framework or a simple method that can work across all industries for the product or service that they're trying to sell?
Yeah, it starts with the strategic map, like creating a positioning messaging strategy using perceptual mapping, long form one-on-one interviews, where you don't ask direct questions, you go indirect questions. And that, if you ask direct questions, you will get biased answers. It's just the human condition.
Can you give an example of an indirect question?
I would say, so tell me about your day. And then you talk about your day, and I gently steer you towards work, and then towards the thing that I say I'm working in project management software. I gently get to the is there anything that that software we use is terrible. They're like, oh, why? And then they'll tell you why it is. But if you sit down and say, tell me why your software is terrible or good, or tell me about your software, they're gonna give you an answer they think you want to hear. They're gonna, you're asking them to remember exactly how they feel and articulate it with perfection. And it's just, there's a lot of, there's social status quo bias, there's social, when you tell your doctor, how many drinks do I have? I have 2. 60% of your doctors write down 4 because of social, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like you don't want people to know that you do these things because they're not frowned upon by society.
You
lie even to yourself. Like, would you ever lie to your wife? Oh, I would never. I lie every time we're in the car. Every time we're in the car. Yeah, Gwen Stefani and Taylor Swift. I have no problem with that at all. In fact, I would like that. Is a lie. That's a lie. But it's just because it's not worth. I don't want to fight that hill, so I don't. It any case. So getting simple is you really you have to cut things out, take things away. And then one of the things that helps with technology is because I'm not an engineer, they have to learn to explain it to me in the terms I can understand. And if I can understand it, Now I can use my ability to produce videos that are high quality, but I know where things go and what to buy and what not to buy. And I don't hose my clients on things like, because they don't know, if you're working at a software company, you don't necessarily know when you hire a director of photography, you're hiring him and his equipment. You're renting his equipment too. So if he uses Red cameras and you're doing like one-on-one interviews, you don't need that guy because you're going to pay $15,000 for an hour of interview footage when really you could have used your phone and a lav mic if it was a sunny day. So yeah, I can edit it. I can score it. I don't need anyone but a cinematographer to do it. And I think that's also part of the, I think having worked with so many different types of people has forced me to learn how to speak. It's like knowing your audience. It's, that was part of the job in TV, but it's come in handy elsewhere because I stop and listen. When I got to business school, I had to relearn how to speak almost like, and I've been, and so, yeah, so when I talk to the CFO, I make sure, hey, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Let's talk about it in terms of dollars. The procurement guy, let's talk about risk. We're talking to the sales team. Actually, if you're in marketing, you should always be talking to the sales team. I don't understand why that's a silo. That makes no sense to me, but people tell me that's abnormal. I'm like, why is that abnormal? They should be, store like sales, marketing, branding, they all work together. Otherwise, you end up doing just sales. And if you do just sales and you're selling every day, that's hard. Selling's hard, but it solves your problems right now, but doesn't look at opportunities down the road. So I'll back up, Lee, ask the question.
So amazing. So let's go into a role play. So I'm going to set up a scenario because, we want to kind of display and demonstrate, how does Mike Terlizzi turn complex technical ideas into simple, powerful narratives, right? And that creativity is a discipline, not just a talent. Simplicity is an art, and that integrity, curiosity, and clarity are non-negotiables in great communication. So I'm going to give you a scenario where you're going to try to communicate and explain ChatGPT, okay? And your audience is going to be different, okay? So you might need to change your narrative and your messaging depending on who you're talking to. So the way that you talk to, a head of finance might be different. The way that you talk to a CTO, a chief technical officer, might be different. But when you're talking about ChatGPT, how do you explain that to your grandmother, even your great grandmother?
I would say to them, well, first I'd anchor. I find out what they know. Do you know how the cloud works? Do you know Google, anything like that? Email?
No, I don't know.
Okay, then I actually almost wanted to put this as a story about explaining tech to my dad, like how to upload or something, can be difficult. But I would say ChatGPT basically takes all the information that's on the internet, and it's part of its automated brain, and it can create, if you know how to ask it the right questions, which they call our prompts. If you engineer prompts, prompt engineering is really just asking good questions, asking specific questions in a certain context. You are my copy editor now. I'm going to give you the sentence. I would like you to shorten it to 55 characters or less. It will be able to use the knowledge from the web, but what it can't do is create something new. That's what it can't do. The only thing it can't do is be creative. So that's the one advantage. But if they said, well, how does that help? I'd say, well, I had to write a letter of recommendation. So I put in, I'm writing a letter of recommendation for this school. And I put the website, so it sucks all that information in about that school. And his qualities are such and such and this, and his grades this, and he's like this. While I write a recommendation letter. And it'll give you one that's, I would say is usable, but is editable. It's a lot easier to edit a 100-word thing to 80 than it is to start from scratch and write and then edit. It accelerates production like that, but it's not going to give you the real thing. And so that's how I would explain it is to them. And they say, well, what does that mean to prompt and say, it's like, what questions do you ask it? So if I ask it, where is the sky? It probably is going to give me, I don't even know what it'll give me, But for instance, like here's how it describes me based on my interactions. How would you describe me? And then let them read it, and they'll say, "Oh wow, it's actually pretty accurate. Like it's not bad." I don't know if you've ever done that, but ask GPT based on our conversations, how would you describe me? And what do I not know about myself? And see what it says. You might be surprised. And so I'd show them that basically you'd have to show. I mean, if you can show them, that's a lot easier than having to explain it.
That's so good. It's more caught than taught. And I'll just do a quick screen share just for fun. This is again just a fun thing. How would you describe ChatGPT to your grandmother? And I'm just curious. All right, what ChatGPT would say.
How would you describe ChatGPT? Grandma, imagine if your library or a dictionary, your recipe box, or your favorite advice column all got together and they had a smart baby that would. Oh, that's a bad. That's I don't think that's the greatest definition.
Yeah. It's like talking to a helpful friend who knows a little bit about everything. You can ask it how to cook something, help write a letter, explain how something works, or even tell you a story, and answers right away, kind of like magic. But don't worry, it's not a real person. It's a computer program that's trained to understand and respond like one, just using words. So if you ever need help with a recipe or a crossword puzzle, you can just ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That ending was good. The beginning was bad, but it ended strong.
I agree. Right? So you're right. Even ChatGPT doesn't have it all right either, right? In terms of how to tell a story.
Yeah, and you mentioned creativity, and I just wanted to say the reason I say it's a discipline is that I think people perceive it as some sort of freewheeling, random process, but it's not. If you wanted to have an idea and be creative, you just have to stop, find a time that's quiet for a couple hours, and just think about the problem you're trying to solve. What is it you're trying to do? And then stop thinking about it. And then later, when you're in the shower, that's why you have shower thoughts. You ever have thoughts in the shower?
Working out, meditating, even dreams.
You know why?
Yeah.
Because when you have your front brain and it's with you, like it goes to sleep, you go to sleep, but your back brain, your subconscious, it's constantly working. So when you're in the shower or meditating, you're doing something routine. You don't have to really use this front part, and that gives an opportunity for the back part to tell, hey, we have something, and then. That's how that works. This isn't just my thought. I looked into this because I started researching it in, of all places, business school, when someone asked me, how do you think of creative ideas? And I didn't have an answer. I was like, And so I went home and thought about it. And I said, curiosity and patience. And that's all I had. But Donald McKinnon did studies on this. And it's the ability to play with ideas and not go with the first idea, but take time to refine it and find the most novel, elegant idea. That's creativity. And if you can learn how to be quiet and listen and think, you can do that. But a lot of people can't do that. They have to be doing and checking things off of the box. And they never sit down to just ponder, to sit in a room quietly. All of humanity's problems will be solved if we learn to sit alone in a room quietly. I think that's what Blaise Pascal said, but I'm probably getting wrong.
Well, it's hard, and whether he said it or not, it's a profound statement, because it's something that I think many people, including myself, don't do enough of, because we're constantly surrounded by noise and saturated by just shiny object syndrome. Which leads me to the next question, which is B2B buyers are more skeptical than ever, and with AI taking off, what kind of storytelling actually cuts through the noise in 2025? Especially in saturated markets like SaaS and AI?
You have to find out I would look at how they're framing what they do. I'd have to kind of use some of the tools to find out which is the best, but you really want to focus on, you don't want to be the AI tool for everything, right? You have to find a niche, find your audience and talk to them and speak to your audience. Like Picard says in his tips, speak like with strength to Klingons, speak to with logic to Vulcans, know your audience. And so you speak to that niche in the right way, just like making a TV show for, the Southern Bible Belt area. There's a certain type of viewer and they watch a certain type of show. And so by finding the niche, and that's founders, sometimes I ask them, like, who's your audience? They say everyone. That's not a good approach. Like, you find that niche and then you attack that niche, because that's where your product fits in the best. So for instance, I chose B2B, B2B tech because it's so complicated and I don't know how it works. So I don't have that cursive expertise. So I can go in and provide that simple message, because they have to find a way to get it to me, make me understand it. And then I find a metaphor or an analogy I find are really good. Familiar concepts are always a good way to like explain a thing or keep it simple, I guess, if that was the question. Or yeah. In other words, a computerized teacher.
Yeah, that's what Narayan was saying regarding ChatGPT. Yeah, I think there is an art of the narrative, the power of storytelling, which is, especially in this day and age, there is so much competition. There's so much, ads that are like saying, we can do this, we promise that, we guarantee this. And it's hard to when we're saying B2B, clients are skeptical more than ever. The buyers want a solution. They want a problem solved. Like, I need more leads, or I need content that actually converts, or I need better sales, or I need to scale. Like, everyone has something that they're trying to solve, but they're trying to find out based on maybe the data, or maybe on like, is this actual real stories or real results that people are giving when they're trying to market. And I want to ask you this as we kind of come to a close. Does jazz, and then we're going back to the bookend, when you're doing jazz piano and learning this, because it's a lot of improvisation in music, does that help you in your storytelling with regards to your creative discipline, as you say?
No, not as it does not. I would say it helps with editing video. Okay. That musical ability that comes in. They say a lot of editors are musicians, and I think there's a reason why. But I would say when I scouted comics, I did comedy. I went up on stage and did stand-up. I would not
stand-up comedy
just to get better at scouting them, to get in their shoes. And then I found that turned public. Like, I had to give presentations. It was a cakewalk, because you go up onto stage and tell jokes and no one laughs. That's definitely, but so I got 10 minutes of, I'd say mediocre at best comedy. And I was like, okay, that's
wow.
Good. But that's helped a lot. And that has helped me with reading the room, and knowing how to use humor strategically. Don't tell jokes. Never tell jokes. Jokes have punchlines, and if they don't hit, everyone knows it. But use humor in your language. They might get it, they might not. But if they don't, just keep talking. Like, it's nothing worse than a joke that doesn't land. That was not a duck.
Oh yeah. I saw the Netflix special where they were calling people on the stage randomly on the Netflix. I can't remember that huge comedy show, and you just see people coming from this random ballot, and the jokes not landing at all, and they're just like, it was so super awkward, right? And so hard to do, but the courage that they had to do that, you can do anything else almost, right?
I wouldn't want to jump up on stage randomly. And if you go to a show, don't sit near the front and don't heckle the comedian. They will be better than you. They are going to beat you.
Oh yeah. I agree. Okay, so I'm gonna end off with that lightning round, so like a game show, as you were saying.
Sure.
What's at stake? Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
so as I give you some questions, I'm going to ask you to kind of react and say, what is your response? What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, it's about not being hard to tell your own story. It's just whenever you're close to something. So right now, my website, I see it like listed there, and I'm in the process. I just haven't like updated it, but it needs to be updated because I have a hard time doing it. But
there you go.
Yeah. So when you read it, you have to read down a little bit to get there, but you shouldn't have to do that.
No worries. Okay. So okay, so here's a couple of questions. Which is harder, getting a tech CEO to tell a compelling story, or nailing a jazz solo on stage with zero rehearsal?
For me, the second one.
Yeah. Okay, nailing a jazz solo on stage with zero rehearsal. Okay, what's a belief that you held 10 years ago about marketing or storytelling that you've completely changed your mind about?
I would say that honestly, that it is a craft that has evolved into a word that doesn't mean anything anymore. And that's really it. I mean, in the business world, it's become an abused word. But if you're in the entertainment world,
storytelling,
yeah, it's become a word that doesn't mean anything. People just say, "Oh, I'm a storyteller." It's like, what are you talking about? That's solution selling, or that's, go on. But
book or author that's changed how you think about business or creativity?
I would say William Gold. William is his name. Who wrote Lord of the Flies, and Simon Sinek. Yeah. And Lord of the Flies. It's because that's what would happen. And Simon Sinek. I used his circle, his why circle, as a story producer to teach the team how to tell a story, and in marketing to teach how to market. It's applicable to both.
Love it. Lord of the Flies, classic. Read that.
Yep, my 8th grade teacher, Piggy for dinner. That was the name of the lesson that day. You know which day.
Nice. Yeah. What's a storytelling technique that you think is underrated or even a little manipulative when done well?
Underrated. I'd say underrated is humor. Humor is appropriate everywhere, and if it's appropriate humor, but you know what I mean. But there's a thing about humor that frightens certain people, usually the non-creative people who are very insecure.
Oh yeah,
they make things complicated because they want you to think they're smart. Like that's one of the reasons. So yeah, that's my quick. You have another flash round?
Yep, I have two more. Right. So if you had to make a 60-second explainer video of who you are and what you do and how you help people, what would you say? How would you say it?
I'd say the biggest problem facing B2B tech companies going to market is they don't know, they can't explain what they're doing, why they're doing it. They can't explain their value proposition in a way people can understand. I will, because I keep things simple. But keeping things simple can get complicated. That's why I'm here. I find your unique position, and then that helps develop your message, and that helps to create a messaging and positioning strategy, which tells your story. And your story is the thing that makes your value, your unique value, not just understandable, but interesting or engaging. And you do it by being funny or being direct or being, however. But once you find that position, and then I tell that story, I write and produce a video that takes the strategy and actually makes a story out of it. Makes that, and you don't have to pay $40,000 for the video because I'm not going to charge you. Again, I'm not going to rip you off.
So Pratik Rathod, thank you for your comment. And if you have any questions or any comments on the podcast or our guest here, just let us know. I think he was asking the same question that I just asked you, which is, sir, can you explain who you are and what you are talking, I guess, about, which is what you just did. You gave us that 60-second explainer. So cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Okay. Well, we already know the answer. Just wanted to get a marketer selling to cat people.
Cats are fine. But
yeah.
Dogs.
If your career was given a movie title, what would be the movie title and what would be the opening scene?
It would be called Schizophrenic because it's just all over the place. I go from industry to industry, and then what was the second part of that?
What would be the opening scene?
The opening scene probably be me fishing and then realizing I forgot to bring my net.
Why would you pick that one? I'm actually just curious.
Oh, I love to fish, but every year when I start fishing, I always forget something like, I forgot what happens when you catch a fish. You need to get the hook out with that thing, and then you need to it's like I didn't bring the knife, I didn't bring that. I have to relearn. I know how to fish, but then when you catch it, that's a whole other story. Like big fish.
Love it. What's one simple storytelling rule anyone listening could apply tomorrow that would instantly level up how they sell, pitch, or present?
What's one storytelling principle?
Yeah, or rule that anyone listening could apply tomorrow that would instantly level up how they sell, pitch, or present.
Always position yourself as Obi-Wan Kenobi and who you're talking to as Luke Skywalker. Don't be the hero of your journey. You are you're the sage. You want to be the guide that helps him blow up the Death Star, whatever your Death Star may be. As the audience, whatever your problem is, I'm going to guide you there. I'm not the guy. I'm the guy behind the guy. Be the guy behind the guy. So that's the story. Yeah.
So you always position yourself as Obi Kenobi, which is the guide, or the sage, which is guiding the hero, which is Luke Skywalker, which is your client, to the destination that they want to reach and the problem that they want to solve.
Yep. Because that gets to, you're going to guide them through and not be anyone who, a lot of people try to be the hero, and also don't talk about your product. Talk about the solution. Always focus on the solution. Nobody cares about the product. They don't care it. They don't need it. So talk about the solution. And if they're not aware they have a problem, make them aware they have a problem, and bring them to your website where they can see the solution right in front of their face.
Love it. Last question before we end off today is, what's a story that you're most proud of telling, and why?
The standing ovation that I missed. Apparently, I did a favor for USC, made 3 videos that were really supposed to be funny. It was a pain to do them because I shot them one weekend. They had to be ready by Friday, and I just worked all week to do them. And it was fun. People liked it and they were laughing, and I was like, oh, that's fun. And I was done, and I left, and I walked outside, and someone said, oh, you're missing your ovation. And I said, my what? And I walked in and I opened up, and then people stood up and started clapping. And then I started clapping because they were clapping, and I didn't realize what was going on until and then it all made sense why Rich something, I can't remember his last name, asked me, what kind of scotch do you like? I was like, what? And I told them. They bought a big bottle, and they said, we'd like to thank Mike for making those things, and blah, blah, blah. Everyone stood up, and I wasn't there. And so my friend said, well, maybe you'll be there for your next unexpected, spontaneous standing ovation. I only tell that story because I missed it. If I were there for it, I wouldn't tell it. But I missed it.
Well, are you saying that that the videos that you made were so good that people stood up and clapped?
I think they were supposed to be funny, and they were. And I think people just appreciated the effort because they saw me really going away, coming in, doing pickup shots. And I think I didn't ask for any, whatever. I was fine doing it. But I think they just saw the effort, and they appreciated it. Yeah.
I love it. So if you guys have liked what you have seen and heard, then definitely go visit www.thesimplemarketing.com. And Mike has been so generous enough to offer his time and his energy and his heart to book a one-on-one call with him. And the URL is at the bottom of the ticker at calendly.com/Mike-Terlizzi /AMA-from-J. What can they expect from a call with you on a one-on-one meetup with you?
They can expect to learn new ways of thinking about product, to thinking about people, audiences, and how to, what they have talents they don't know they have, and I'd like to teach them that, and they will, and how to bring a B2B company to market 5 years ahead of schedule, how messaging can make that happen. Good messaging can make that be a part of what would make that happen. You have to have a good product, but no one's going to listen to it if they don't have any interest. So they will learn how to be interesting. That's what I would say.
Amazing. So if you guys are a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur, comment podcast to be on the Sales Ninja Show podcast. Were you going to say something else, Mike?
I was going to say, if you do go to the website, just click to like case studies and just go right there, and you'll see what people have said about me and why. So above the fold is a mess right now, but it's a work in progress.
Okay, awesome. So check out the case studies as Mike has shared. And if you guys want to learn more about how to find your talent and how to take a B2B to market, from Mike's own journey of being from LA film sets to cybersecurity to doing an MBA to go into B2B tech to share powerful narratives and storytelling, then you definitely want to check him out and book a call. So on behalf of everyone who's watching, thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys liked the Sales Ninja Show podcast, please leave a positive review so with that we can reach more people. that need to hear this story of how we are on the journey to help 1 million people to sell more, to give more. Thank you, Mike, so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, take care.
Appreciate it. All right. Bye-bye.
Massive.